You remember that thing we mentioned from Rav Sharkey about how the beginning Jews standing up for themselves is the beginning of Ruach HaKodesh? It's from More Nevuchim. The Rambam says the lowest level of divine inspiration. There's levels of Nevuah, right? And Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration. So the top level is Moses. Some say the Messiah will be like him or approaching him. The Rambam even says such a thing. So you can't get that high. And then there's various levels of Nevuah. He says the most basic level is divine inspiration of heroism. What's described as Moshe Rabbeinu last week. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was already grown into a man, what did he do? He rescued people. He saw someone striking a Jewish man, so he saved them. That's what Unklus says, not a Hebrew, a Jew, translated as a Jew. And he saw Jethro's daughters being, I guess, bullied. So what did he do? He saved them, right? That was the most basic thing. And he says that others, all the Shoftim had this level. And he says King David and Saul got to this level when they were anointed. They're anointed, and suddenly they had the power, and they were able to achieve heroic feats and save Am Yisrael just by getting anointed. So I wanted to point this out. Uh, the anointment is not what made it actually happen. We saw before the anointing oil is gone. What was it meant for? Anointing the high priest. But it turns out you can become high priest without the oil, right? Merubah begadim. Yes, that's why they did it for most of history. The high priest, instead of being anointed for 7 days, was made to wear the vestments for 7 days, and that's how he became the Kohen Gadol, right? But turns out one day was sufficient. Okay. Next, a king. The king is anointed, the Davidic king. But did every Davidic king need to be anointed? No. Melech ben Melech doesn't need it. And the only time if you ever see that, for example, even Solomon, the fact that he was anointed was only because of the Terometh. He had challengers, his own brother. And subsequently, the only time we read about Davidic kings being anointed was because of a Terometh. But really, it was unnecessary. Once David himself was anointed, it became a family possession forever. And the temple implements also only had to be anointed once in history when the Mishkan was dedicated. But for the subsequent temples, they just brought the kalim into service. You didn't need the anointing oil. It was a formality, and it was unnecessary. And this is just like, well, the Rambam describes the Urim V'Tumim. Yes, there are those who say the Urim V'Tumim had something magical inside that allowed the Kohen Gadol to use them, right? But the Rambam says, based on two psukim in the Tanakh, and also the fact that Chazal never said this explicitly, the Urim V'Tumim was nothing more than the Choshen with the Avnei Choshen. And it was the Kohen who was able to access it. If the Kohen was undeserving of the divine inspiration resting upon him, so he could not get an answer from Urim V'Tumim. But it was physically the same thing all along. Or the temple. The Rambam says it wasn't the lack of the Ark of the Covenant in the temple that we lost prophets. It's that we're oppressed. We're not on the right enough level. Things are wrong in the world, so we don't hear God's voice. But if things were right, we would. And it doesn't matter that there was no Ark of the Covenant there. As a matter of fact, it seems that for a long time in the Second Temple, there was still Nevi'im. Ark of the Covenant was gone for a century and more, but they still had it. And the Maccabees, who achieved this level, this first level of divine inspiration, fighting back for Am Yisrael, the way like the Shoftim of old, they were also waiting for a Navi to show up to answer their questions because they knew that where they were, it was perfectly normal for a Navi to show up. They didn't say like, oh, we have to find the Ark of the Covenant or some anointing oil or something to get a Navi. They figured if we work hard enough, a prophet will arise. They didn't say, no, there hasn't been a prophet for 100 years or 200 years, so that's it. It's impossible. And that's the way we're supposed to believe.